Thank you for joining us today on Gutsy Christianity with Rosa Hopkins. This episode is brought to you by ChoiceWriters.com. Elegant copy from the best writers can be found at ChoiceWriters.com. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Balarie. She's author of the book Fear Fighting and her newest release, Battle Ready. It says it's train your mind to conquer challenges, defeat doubt, and live victoriously. Sounds very exciting. Hello, Kelly, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Rosa. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about Battle Ready and Fear Fighting, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And so what inspired you to write the book? What felt need did you think existed in the world that you needed to write a book called Battle Ready?
Oh my goodness, Rosa. I don't know about you, but I've gone through one battle after another, and it's just felt like these things will not stop clobbering me. I've had depression and financial issues, relational concerns that literally were just tearing my heart apart, right? I was having, health scare that looked like it was going to put me in the hospital or steal my walking legs from me, and many different things that have tackled me. And I got to the point where I was so full of doubt, wondering if God was really going to come through me. I was so full of discouragement, wondering if anything was ever going to change for me in the future. And I was so full of despair, feeling like, oh God, I'm just trying to make it through these battles. Where are you? That I got to the point where I said, I want to write down the strategies to seize new faith and belief in the midst of battle. Because I believe we can prepare in advance, proactively getting ahead of the problems rather than reactively falling down in doubt and discouragement and frustration and emotional responses.
Absolutely. And so the whole premise is that you need to be prepared before these things happen. And so how can a person do that, especially when they're feeling hopeless?
It's funny because the other day I was outside with my husband. He was assembling what was it? It was like a basketball hoop, and he was trying to put it together. He had all his nuts and bolts, and he was putting it at, just working so hard. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he said, Kelly, having the right tool really does make a difference. And I thought to myself, you know what, honey? You're completely right. And a lot of times we're not ready with the right tool at the right time for battle. So if we can get ahead of our battles and renew our thoughts with Christ, right? Identify the ways that we're thinking. Think about the prayers that we might need when we come to hit hard times. If we can align our hearts, minds, bodies, souls, and spirits with Jesus, then when the worst of life hits, we're not sitting in the middle of the pool feeling like we don't know how to swim and we're about to drown. Instead, we're like, no, we know how you lift up an arm, you pull the water behind you, you do a little kick, and we're like, we've practiced this. We've gotten this in our tool belt, so we know how to stand strong. And that's really where I came from, because frankly, Rosa, I was so tired of feeling like I was always in panic mode rather than peace mode, and feeling like I was just emotionally responding rather than responding with the mind of Christ that Jesus says is inside of me.
Absolutely. It makes me kind of think of having almost like an emergency fund, whereas, sometimes, and I've done this, my family's done this, where you're always on the edge because you don't have any money saved up. It's kind of like preparing in advance, because in the Bible, Jesus says that the storm and the winds and the rains are coming. They are coming, whether your house is built on the rock or whether your house is built on the sand. It's coming. So you see what happened to the house that wasn't prepared, and you see what happens to the house that is. And so I absolutely love that idea. And you talk about a Buffett mindset, and that's sort of the same thing, how it can change your lives. Can you walk our listeners through that a little bit?
My son, when he eats dessert, will sit at home and he'll take little pieces, and you cannot touch his brownie. You cannot take a bite of his ice cream. He loves it so much. And so he'll kind of really be protective over his food. One day we brought my son to a buffet, and there it was there was so many desserts. I told him, honey, just go and enjoy the food. You can go back to the buffet as many times as you want. And so he would walk back to the buffet, grab all his food, and come and sit down. And the most interesting thing happened. He looked at me and he was like, Mama, Do you want a bite of my brownie? Do you want some of my ice cream? Would you like to try this pie? Let's go back and get more. And rather than hoarding it and feeling like I don't have enough, I must preserve, right? I can't give to others. I have to self-protect. I'm not going to have what I need for myself. Instead, he was giving it all away. And the same thing happens to us. We can transfer from this mind of lack where God's not going to pull through for us. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough talent. We're too loud. We're not enough this. We're da, da, da. You know, and the cycle goes on to this mindset, the feast of God's table. It says, God, through you, Christ is more than enough. He can supply all my needs according to his glorious riches. He can do exceedingly abundantly more than I can ask or imagine. And battle ready helps us to move from one mindset, the mindset of not enough, the mindset of I can't, it's impossible, there's no way, to the other mindset that says, God, I believe, I have faith, I trust you, you're a good father, you're going to pull through for me. And that small shift, it makes all the difference to a battle that you're facing or that you will face in the future.
Absolutely. That is powerful. And so a lot of times readers and people that go to church, they get this false expectation, this false idea that people that write books or maybe perhaps are on radio shows are above the fray somehow and don't deal with insecurities. And so you have dealt with insecurities. Can you tell our listeners, walk them through a little bit, what are some of those things that you've faced, and also how being filled with God's Spirit makes a difference?
Okay, let me just say, the reason why the book is named Battle Ready is because we are constantly in a battle between flesh and spirit, right? I am constantly battling, even now, like, am I reaching people? Am I good enough? Am I speaking too loud? You know, will I make a difference? You know, but the reality is when we stop looking at us and we start looking at God, suddenly we realize that he puts the stars up in the sky every single night. He puts the moon up and gets the sun up during the day. He's holding together literally my body as it has life, right? The seas are moving without me instructing them to do so. He's doing everything, and it's by his grace that I'm living, moving, and even doing any good things. And suddenly it's like the weight of my burdens, of my insecurity, transfers onto him, where he's like, Kelly, honey, I love you, but it's not about you. It's about me and what I'm doing with you, for you, and through Christ. And that new paradigm shift, that new outlook makes everything look different. And that's what we go through in Battle Ready. There's 12 biblical mindsets that will help people seize truth, seize the mind of Christ in them so that they can live purposefully and powerfully.
Absolutely.
With Jesus.
So what advice would you offer to a woman that's listening to this and she feels abandoned by God, or overwhelming perhaps if she's gone through one difficult season after another?
I would ask her to go back, right? There is some power when we go back and look at God's faithfulness. Go back, my sister. First of all, I want you to also know that I understand your pain. I know what it is to feel like you're in that place of like, God, are you really going to pull through for me? It looks impossible. There is no way. But when we remember God's faithfulness, like, oh yeah, there was that time where I didn't have enough money for that finger surgery, God, and I was like, I'm going to go under, like literally bankruptcy, here I come, right? But then I called into the health insurance company and they said, you know what? Oh, you have the like premium plan for health insurance. You don't have to pay anything. Like those things, go back to those and give God thanks for those. Remember how you felt. Renew yourself in that and pull out the praise from that place. God, you did it then. God, what's to stop you from doing it again today? Jesus, if you gave your whole life for me, how much more won't you give for me today?
Absolutely. And so in your book, you mentioned things that are limiting things. I think of limiting beliefs. I know I have run into that so much. And it's funny. It's almost like I think of when Peter steps out of the boat, or when you put a boat in the water, you start to feel that resistance. A lot of times you don't run into these limiting ideas until you start to move, until you start to follow God and do things. Then you realize that you have these ideas that say, no, you can only go this far. No, this is all you'll ever be, because this is what you really are over here. And so you talk about speaking limiting things to others and how that affects that. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how we can change this cycle?
We have in our mind what's called neural pathways, and you could consider these like paths that we've created in our mind. So if there's a pathway going down in the wilderness, you're going to walk that same path. The same thing goes for our thoughts. If you think to yourself, I'm never as good as her, I'm always messing up, I always find myself in failure, God never pulls through for me, and you're thinking these thoughts, what you're doing is you're deepening the track in your mind. The power comes when we start to build a new track. Now, if you're going to start to build a new way to go in the wilderness and you're building a new path, it's going to take a little bit of time for that new track to actually form. So the more we speak out these truths, right, the more we limit others, the more we judge others, the more we call out other people through negativity, we're actually hearing our own words in our mind, and that's actually restricting ourselves, right? Because if we're thinking about other people with these limiting words, what we're doing is we're telling our own mind we should judge ourselves in the same way. And it's so easy to look at other people and put them down. But friends, we don't want to put down the body of Christ. We want to love and lift up, and there's more than enough for everyone. Jesus tells us that, the workers are few. So that is really one of the keys to thinking about self-limiting thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't think a lot of us think about how that affects us, the ones that are doing this, speaking these things to others. But it absolutely does. I remember one time our pastor went into this subject about taking the beam out of our own eye, the log, before we try to take out this fleck in our brother's eye. And said that oftentimes the things that we think are irritating about other people are the very same things we do. So it's a very interesting thing that instead of looking at this log that you've got in your own eye, we're going to say, well, oh yeah, look at you over here. Look at the things that you're doing. And so you started to write this book, Battle Ready, and I had heard that you hit one trial after another. What kinds of challenges were they? What did you face?
Rosa, it's no joke. And let me just tell you all, when you step out for God, you have great victory. But with it, there comes great opposition in many cases. Now, does that stop us? No, because Jesus is greater and he overcomes everything. However, when I wrote the book, I went through green bathwater that was like hyperchlorinated. We ended up having to move houses, but not before a hurricane was coming towards our house, and we had to flee out of the state. And then I just hit some major relational problems that felt like they were just going to tear up some key relationships that meant the world to me. But I will say this. Every time you hit a battle, you are coming into new wisdom and revelation. There are things that God can teach you when you're in the heat of a trial that you would never be able to glean when you're in the place of just abundant victory, or where you're getting everything you want. There's a lot of power to being poor and needy from God, because then you see how much God is a good father, how much he comes through, how he is the ultimate provider, right? And so Battle Ready helps us to discover God, but it also helps you to discover your own personal story. It's great for you to hear my story, and I'll cheerlead you on and give you like little nuggets. But in the book Battle Ready, you're going to get personal application to your own life and be able to determine, okay, where has the attacks happened? And yeah, the enemy schemes and does things similar ways in the future. I want to get you to your own conclusions, not just mine.
Absolutely. And so I know some of us are wondering, some of us who have not yet read the book, some of us listening, can we really change these lifelong ingrained habits? And if so, how do we begin to do this?
We all look at New Year's Day and we're like, oh, I'm going to do a new resolution, right? And we're totally in, except for when we're totally out, down, and dejected because we didn't do a good job at our New Year's resolutions. And we feel so frustrated. Well, I found that it actually takes 66 days to form a new habit. Science proves this. Not only that, it's totally okay to fail a couple times along the way. Whereas I felt like that was so encouraging to my heart, because that means I don't have to have everything perfect. I can learn along the way. I can make some mess ups. There's grace, there's allowance for me. So, friends, I encourage you. Check out IamBattleReady.com. Beyond the book, on that page, there are a whole bunch of resources. You can take the What's My Battle Style quiz, and actually just your best way of battling with God that really brings breakthrough in your life. Plus, you can get heart steadying prayers, a whole bunch of other things. You want to journey with God through the book, but also get the supportive resources that I've included on that page.
Absolutely. And so this book sounds really exciting. You all need to go out and get it as soon as you can, as soon as it releases. And so there are gifts for people that pre-release. All right, let me start.
Actually, it's released now. People can purchase it on Amazon, and then we've got a whole bunch of gifts on IamBattleReady.com.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. And so tell us where they can find you, where they can find your book, where they can go and find all these things online.
Thanks, Rosa. The book is found on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can also visit IamBattleReady.com for all my little gifts I have for you there, as well as visit me on PurposefulFaith.com where I blog. I'm just so real. I'm like, this is life. It's hard, but let's do it together and learn together at PurposefulFaith.com.
Exactly. Well, it was so good to have you here today, Kelly Balarie. Thank you for being on Gutsy Christianity.
Thanks for having me, Rosa. It's so fun.
Absolutely. And so today's episode was brought to you by ChoiceWriters.com, elegant copy from the best writers, ChoiceWriters.com. And thank you so much for tuning in. You can find me, Rosa Hopkins, at GutsyChristianity.com. And thank you for sharing your Sunday with us. God bless. Oh, that was not the best ending. I might have